Hi, welcome to Maker's Bar. I'm Akshata Shetty, your host. Today, we are on a mission to create and raise a million leaders. Today, I have Michael Bakunin, who is the CEO and co founder of Epic Charging. And I'm really excited to learn about his story. So, welcome, Michael, and thank you for coming on Maker's Bar.
Hi, Akshata. Thank you for having me. Excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, same here. So tell me, Michael, a little bit about your early career. And I see you have had a long career. So tell me and how you're doing what you're doing right now in terms of starting this company, right? So tell me the journey as to how it all got started and what led you to starting Epic Charging.
Yeah, absolutely. I love telling this story. It actually goes back to 2012. At that time, I was doing a full-time MBA program in Spain at IE Business School. And, as probably many MBA students, I was looking for, admission or career shift or like something with an impact.
Yeah.
And at that time, yeah, so it probably resonates because I know you did an MBA as well. So it's kind of, people are searching for like more meaning in their lives and also like what's next, what's next.
Yeah.
At that time, Nissan launched the first mass produced electric vehicle, Nissan Leaf.
Yeah.
Luckily, Nissan was actually recruiting at probably top five business schools, mostly in Europe. And
Uh-huh.
when I saw this opportunity, it's like, okay, I think I can connect the dots here. So, like, I think this is exciting. I think this is the future. So
Yeah.
I applied, I did my best, and I was luckily accepted. And, since 2012, I was exclusively working on electric vehicles. I stayed with Nissan until 2021.
Hmm.
Did a bunch of projects in different like places around the world. So I was originally based in Europe, in France, and I did projects related to electric vehicle car sharing, second life EV batteries, vehicle to grid technology in Denmark, and many other projects. Then I was promoted. I went to Japan. I was on the EV team, mostly overseeing the Asian market. So it's obviously a lot of
Yeah.
that has to do with China.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time in China on my assignment in Japan. But slowly, I was, started working closely with Silicon Valley-based companies
Hmm.
in the mobility space. In 2018, I moved to the Bay Area with my own project. At that time, I was actually running the autonomous drive project between Nissan and Waymo. So I was the team lead,
Hmm.
also was on the program side. And this is how I found myself in Silicon Valley and kept on working on the new technology, which involved electric vehicles as well. And
Yeah.
autonomous drive seems like, oh, that's the future. That's like really cool. And, 5, 7 years ago, everyone was even more excited than now. But the truth is, you also need to service those cars, right? So, like when they're out there, you're fine. I mean, they're kind of self-driving, but at some point of time, they need to go back to the depot. They need
Hmm.
to be cleaned, maintained, serviced, and charged.
Hmm.
And that was part of the work I was doing. And this is how I got to know very well the charging technology, the needs of fleet charging. In 21, I decided to actually launch my own company, which is called Epic Charging. And
Yeah.
my first area of focus was essentially fleet charging. So this is how it all started.
Oh wow, that's a very long story and a long career in the same space. That's amazing. So, what does Epic Charging do, and what is like your product line, or what does the company actually do?
Right. So we are a B2B SaaS company. So we are a software company. So
Hmm.
what we do, we connect to charging stations, electric vehicles, uh, payment terminals, grid services. So we are the platform layer, and
Hmm.
we enable different services.
Hmm.
Imagine you're a hotel owner, apartment building owner, school district, or like operating a fleet of electric vehicles. You will be buying charging stations, and you will be also looking for a software like ours to be able to run different services, authorize sessions, track the usage, accept payments, run the grid services, monetize, carbon credits.
Mhm.
All this type of projects is what we typically do, and we cover all aspects from fleet charging, workplace charging, public charging, hotel, apartment buildings. This is what we do. So the software layer specifically.
The software layer specifically. So tell me one thing, like as you started building this company, you're relatively new to the Bay Area, right? You said you moved in 2018. So what are like I mean, even I do understand that you have a long background in the space, but what is like the significant challenges that you faced as you were building the software? And I don't know if you have a software background or building this product. What were the biggest challenges you faced in the initial stages of starting the business?
Good questions. Good questions. I was lucky to have my co-founders helping with the technology, and
Nice.
I was kind of a subject matter expert, so I knew quite a bit about electric vehicles and charging space. But
Mhm.
probably as any other startup, we were facing the same product market fit
Mhm.
challenge. In
Yeah.
the very early days of our company, we actually tried to do both. We
Okay.
engineered charging stations and the software, and we're pushing really hard. But at some point of time we realized that there are not so many companies like Apple and Tesla out there.
Mhm.
So it's really hard to do both hardware and software, and we
Mhm.
better specialize. And at some point of time we had to sit down with co-founders, with the team, and say, are we a hardware company? Are we a software company? Can we do both? And if we do only one thing really well, what it's going to be? And the
Mhm.
answer was really obvious, straight to the point. The expertise, the skills, the inspiration, everything was around software. At the
Mhm.
same time, we realized the hardware space became very, very competitive because there were so many new players from Asia entering the US market, because the
Mhm.
US market is super lucrative with all these, subsidies and grants and everything coming from the federal government. So everyone wants to really access this funding. And we said, hey, are we in a position to truly compete with like mass production from Asia? Can
Mhm.
we do it better than companies out there which
Mhm.
spend decades developing these things? Or we
Mhm.
focus on the software, and believe it or not, the US customers, they actually are happy to buy charging stations manufactured overseas. But when it comes to uh, processing data, uh, transactions, cybersecurity, American customers tend to choose the US based software. And we said, okay, looks like a product market fit. So we kind of
Yeah.
shifted gears. That was a big challenge for us in the beginning. So I think it was also, we were searching for the right product market fit. And I think that was the main challenge. We
Mhm.
found it. And since then, I think things were like more structured, organized, and we had way more focus.
Got it. Understood. So, okay. So as you're entering, I mean, you said that okay, you product market fit was the big difficulty, right? And as you do have like a lot of understanding within the space, but what about like you talked about subsidies and all of that? Did you understand it getting in, or did you have to like understand it as we on the go? Because I was recently trying to think about like applying for grants, and I don't come from the grant world at all. And I was wondering how to even do that, right? So how did you go about, um, trying to understand all of this? And it's relatively a new space as well. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's been around for some time. People have been experimenting, but still, how did you go about facing? I mean, understanding those landscape, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. So we have a privilege of being in California. California is probably like California, Oregon, and Washington is probably 50% of the EV market in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And it started earlier, but it also has a lot of regulation.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are right here in the middle of electrification, you can actually anticipate changes, learn from like all the uh, use cases, and develop. And that's what we did. Our first objective was to make sure we understand how it works in California. what types of requirements we have here, driven by Department of Transportation, CTEP, Call VIP, South California Ages, and PG&E. All those organizations, they have creative idea how to make our life better,
Mm-hmm.
but which essentially means we need to be able to develop our software in integration with charger manufacturers in a manner, in a way to be compliant with the regulation and be on those lists. So
Okay.
we started very early with California, but it helped us a lot because other states are actually following. So I was surprised recently, like a couple of states just added our software to the list because they discovered them on the California list. So,
Oh,
like you have this benefit of being really in the center of electrification, but we
yes.
also do this work proactively. So we're looking into all programs across the United States and Canada mostly. We
Mhm.
just certified our software with NYSERDA, with National Grid, and we keep doing that on a rolling basis. It's a never ending process.
Mhm.
We're just in the beginning of electrification. And I
Mhm.
think we just need to keep our hands on, like, really on the pulse and trying to see how we can move faster, how we can react, and anticipate changes to be able to offer the best service.
Got it. Understood. So, what has been the most satisfying business moment of this business so far for you? Is it like starting the company, or was there any customer that you actually like really made a difference? What was the most satisfying moment?
In general, I feel really good when people come back to me and say, you know what, you exceeded my expectations.
Yeah.
So, our name, Epic Charging, actually stands for Epic Charging Customer Experience. You probably know the company, the shoe company is Zappos, right? So, they build the
Yeah.
whole, like the entire empire based on customer experience. And
Yeah.
that has been always a big inspiration for me personally. And
Yeah.
this is the attitude my team has towards anything related to customer experience.
Yeah.
So we focused on that, and charging space is difficult. It's very known for chargers that are not functional,
Mhm.
offline, require repair and maintenance. And
Mhm.
it's really hard to identify the problem, but also identify the person or company in charge of the specific charging station. So
Mhm.
what we did, like, no finger pointing,
Mhm.
if it's needed, we're gonna do it. And
Mhm.
then it started paying off. It's like
Good.
step by step. It takes time. It takes time. You build your reputation. It takes time. And you're asking about the most satisfying moment. And I
Mhm.
think we know we have a friend in common. So it's Ian Wisniewski, who has recently joined our team.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the most satisfying moments. He was my customer. So he's a co-founder of a public charging network on the West Coast called EVCS, and he was
Yeah.
using my software, and he was so impressed by the services and the quality of our solutions that one day he said, you know what? I
Yeah.
want to join your team. Like, can
Oh,
we make a deal here, right? So can we
yeah.
make it work? And for me, that was not just for me, but for the entire team, was a validation that we are on the right path. We're doing the right thing. It is challenging. It's taking more time. Like, if you want to be perfect and deliver that epic customer experience, it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
But when over time, it's
Yeah.
becoming real. It's becoming
Yes.
real, and people start actually recommending you, referring you, and saying, "Look at those guys. Just you won't regret. Try them
Yeah.
out." And it's like, okay, that's a
Yeah.
good sign.
I would say, yeah, Ian has done tremendously well for himself with EVCS and now with Epic Charging. I'm really proud of him as well as a friend, and I keep telling him like, you inspire me every day. So,
Cheers.
how do you define success for yourself and your business? I mean, obviously, you all are like working on the West Coast, and you're slowly getting into other states as well. But how do you kind of define, where do you see all of this kind of going in the future?
Well, first of all, I need to say that I actually enjoy what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I don't count hours. I work on weekends. We are recording this interview on Saturday, and it's not just me. A lot of team members also would do the same. So A QA engineer was in our lab just a few hours ago testing,
Yeah.
the new protocol. So we have that kind of spirit of, we love what we are doing. We are
Yeah.
super excited. This is our passion. And looking into the future, I cannot really imagine myself going back to a corporate. I would rather do something new, creative, which is also good for the society.
Yeah.
So when you talk about success metrics, we are just in the beginning of electrification.
Yeah.
So we've been hearing about electric vehicles for like 10, 15 years, maybe longer.
Yeah.
And when I just joined Nissan in 2012, I was telling my friends and family, look, I'm working on this new great technology, electric vehicles. They were all laughing. Oh, good luck. This is so fun, like keep going. But but now, like, I feel I was part of that new kind of way for people who were
Yeah.
actually moving the perception in society into a different direction. So I definitely, there is my contribution in it. It's very satisfying, and we do have our goals. Like for our organization, I believe, my first tangible milestone is when we're going to hit $100 million in valuation. This is
Yeah.
how you can measure success. That means you have a valid product, you have good customers, you're growing really fast. But
Yeah.
honestly, I would rather stay and see all the fruits and benefits of going fully electric on like national scale and global scale.
Yeah.
So I think for me, the mission itself has more importance than any metric which we can have in between.
So 2033, after that, you cannot buy any more gasoline vehicles in California. At least California's passed that law. I don't know if everywhere else they passed it, but I am going to use my gas vehicles until 2033. I mean, even you can use it post as well, but you cannot buy anymore. So as after 2033, I think there'll only be electric vehicles across California. So it's going to be really interesting. So
Yeah. It's. I mean, I just want to chime in. I think in general, the United States is slightly behind Europe and China on the electrification side,
mhm,
but the United States have the capabilities to bring it to the real scale, like massive scale. So there are a couple of good examples in Europe. The countries like Norway, uh,
mhm,
huge electrification,
mhm,
really good work, but it's way easier to achieve it at a smaller scale. I
mhm,
think what California does, and I believe we have all the support from the federal level, is to make this change and happen at the larger scale, like one
mhm,
of the largest automotive markets in the world. And
mhm.
that's going to be very, very impactful. So, and it's possible. It is possible.
Got it. So why do you say that US is lagging behind Europe and China in terms of electrification? Is it because the laws of, or is it just as a country on the whole? I'm just curious, actually.
No, it's just numbers and incentives. It probably took a little bit more time from the US to gear up and, convince all the key stakeholders. Companies like China, they are dependent on exporting oil from overseas.
Yeah.
So obviously, it's a national strategy to make sure China can be more independent and
Hmm.
actually invest in their own technology, and they chose electric vehicles for multiple reasons. It's pollution, but also independence and technology. And unfortunately, they were like, I don't know, unfortunately or fortunately, they were no so many pressing factors for the United States to go fully electric. But it happened, in my view, in a more kind of natural way because of the technology. Like,
Hmm.
and obviously, the elephant in the room is the company called Tesla. So the
Hmm.
technology which Tesla developed actually convinced a lot of users that EV is not just an ugly small car which is slow. You have range anxiety, but it can be fast. It can be
Hmm.
tech. It can be self-driving. So, and people started choosing electric vehicles over gas cars very quickly. So I think the reasons behind electrifications are different, and
Hmm.
I think they are more kind of natural and kind of proven in the United States at this point of time.
Hmm.
But I think the government is actually catching up. So all these billions announced for charging infrastructure, incentives for electric vehicles will
Mhm.
help a lot. But if you just purely look at numbers, like
Mhm.
percentage of sales and things like that,
Mhm.
the US needs to do the homework. So put California aside. The numbers are really good in California and they're growing, but
Mhm.
the rest of the country needs to catch up, and it's happening. So I think the wake up call happened a couple of years ago, maybe like in 21, 2022. So now things are moving faster, and I'm sure United States will be one of the leading electrified markets in the world.
Yeah. So tell me one thing. As you're doing, you had probably told me about your Nissan example when you joined Nissan. Your relative said, "Yeah, yeah, okay, fine. You can electrify whatever you want, right?" So you might have naysayers and might have, adversity and doubt when you're doing a company. It's not easy. Like when I'm doing whatever I'm doing within Maker's Bar, it's not easy for me because I find it like every time people question me as to what I'm doing, right? Which is my near and dear relatives. Um, so, so I mean, how do you kind of handle adversity and doubt in your case?
An excellent question. It's not my first startup. I've
Mhm.
done a number of projects in the past, in between. Even for Nissan, I built a corporate startup. So it's been part of my DNA, and I feel I need to keep doing it and experimenting. But every time you step into this kind of new thing, new venture, you're taking risks, significant risks,
Yeah,
not just for yourself, but for investors, team members, your family,
yeah,
and there is always a lot of anxiety. So, and the way you handle it, I'm just trying to be to trying not to allocate too much importance to specific events. Like
hmm,
maybe you would say, hey, I need to sign this deal or get this check from a az whatever company or a venture fund. If I don't get it, I'm gonna die, or there is no future for my business. And you cannot sleep at night. You wake up, you're sweating. It's like, oh my god, it's like, this is so terrible. I'm
yeah,
not doing that. I'm not doing that. I mean, it's easy to say, it's harder to do,
yeah,
but I'm trying to be a little bit more balanced on how I perceive of the
mhm,
perception of opportunities around me, the
mhm,
circumstances around me, and I'm just trying to be, a little bit detached emotionally.
yeah,
It's again, it's easier to say than to do,
yeah.
but if you keep burning yourself all the time, and all this anxiety will eat you, so you just need to protect yourself, and this is the way that worked for me.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting point you say, because it's a philosophy of my life, attachment with detachment, right?
Mm.
Because it's just very hard otherwise to function. I mean, not just in like in your professional life, but also in your personal life as well. Because if you don't have that, where you're detached to some extent, detached from the outcome, right? You cannot function like you said, I didn't receive this check kind of a thing. And especially I mean deep tech and hard, like I work in hard industries now, hard industrial use cases. Like I see a lot of companies, startups, that's one of my role. And I feel like it's just very very hard for some of those companies, because even to write like an agreement, it might take you like 5 or 6 months out of diligence of that. So it requires you to have some amount of, and you can go 5 6 months into it and basically not be able to sign it, right? So I really feel like anybody who gets into this journey of entrepreneurship and does this, they really, I think they have to work with a certain amount of detachment and no attachment to the outcome, because it's otherwise a very hard thing to do. Yeah.
Agree with you. I do agree with you.
Yeah. So, so tell me about a failure that has become like a very valuable lesson for you. Like for me, all my life, my failures, I don't think about my successes so much. In fact, it doesn't even register in my head. But my failures, like they register in my head, and I think about them all the time, and they basically are the most valuable lessons I have got. So, how do you? What is was a like a failure, example of a failure which basically became the biggest lesson of your life? and which you think about every day?
It's an excellent segue. I think we just spoke about corporations, long
Yeah.
lead times, processing, and all of that.
Yeah.
I came, uh, to run my own startup after almost 10 years with a large corporate. And
Hmm.
the first strategy which I chose for my company was, okay, let's target those corporates, S&P 500 company.
Hmm.
Let's develop a business case, a pilot project, launch the project. And we almost killed our company by pursuing this strategy, almost killed it.
Hmm.
And the reason for that is very obvious. The timelines are different.
Hmm.
While you rightly said it can take at least 6 months to sign an agreement with a corporate, then you do a pilot project, then buy-ins and stuff. And at the end of the journey, you can actually face the wall. They can say, hey, you know what? We just replaced the VP of strategy, and our new person just doesn't like this direction, so we are shifting gears. And
Yeah.
thank you for your help. Like, and
Yeah.
that was probably one of the biggest lessons I had in the very beginning.
Yes.
And we were lucky. I mean, we are still around, which means we found a way out. And essentially, what we did, we started working with a smaller scale kind of organizations. And as
Mhm.
opposed to trying to boil the ocean, change the world in one shot, we just started making smaller steps.
Yeah.
Um, and they were baby steps in the very beginning, really like truly baby steps.
Yeah.
But that helped us to kind of build a better product, listen to customers, iterate, and also have a little bit more forgiveness. Because
Yeah.
when you work as a partner with an organization of your scale or slightly larger than you, they can understand all the struggles. You're doing new things together,
Mhm.
and you can experiment a little bit. So
Yeah.
that was probably one of the biggest mistakes we did in the very early days of the company. We
Mhm.
shifted gears, and after almost 3 years in operation, now we are getting back to that big S&P 500 scale again. So
Yeah.
we are again in discussions with those bigger guys. But what has changed, I'm not dependent on their decision making processes. I'm not dependent on any organization which would, determine the life of my company or the future of my company.
Yeah.
We can continue exploring opportunities, running pilot tests, but I would give them like reasonable priority, but I wouldn't really hinge the entire future of my company on a partnership like that. Huge
Yeah.
lesson,
Yeah.
lots of adjustments, and I think
Yeah.
we kind of have gone through the full cycle right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that has been a huge learning for me personally.
That's amazing, actually. I have to say, not a lot of entrepreneurs have that grit in them. Like I meet a lot, and people have don't have that patience. And like again, like working with not putting all your eggs in the same basket, and these things like a huge lead time, especially when you're doing enterprise software or industrial softwares, and huge lead time. You're running POCs, you're running pilots, and you don't know if it's going to go somewhere or not, right? So it's amazing that, I mean, the level of understanding you have of some of this, how this process works. So how do you, since you're developing something which is cutting edge, how do you foster innovation and creativity within your company?
Well, I personally believe it's very hard to change people. So the first important step in how you actually foster innovation, you actually hire people who are innovative by their nature.
Mhm.
So that's the hiring and selection process. So obviously in the very early days it were mostly founders and tech people.
Mhm.
But the first thing you need to keep in mind, like, are those the right people around you? Because if you're
Mhm.
hiring someone and think, okay, maybe he's not best at that, and I'm gonna change it and train him and educate. No,
Yeah.
we don't have time for that, and probably it won't be possible at all.
Yeah.
So I was lucky. All my co-founders, all my key team members are actually very creative, very innovative. So the way you handle it, I think you need to give room. Like you can say no, and you must say no to many things as a startup because you don't have resources, you don't have money and time. But you
Yeah.
need also to encourage this type of things. Like I would wake up and the head of sales say, "Hey, I have a new creative idea. Why don't we do this?" And it's like, yes, and then maybe, and then maybe we can have a discussion and we slightly adjust the idea and we can still pilot it. I think if you give people this feeling that when they come up with a new idea, that you will actually listen and in some cases support, I think that starts working as a cycle. And
That's
I personally, we're still a small team, right? So we're 10 people full time, lots of engineers, but I think that piece is really our strength. So
yeah.
people around me, including myself, are very creative, very innovative, trying new
Yes.
things. And I think we're actually being recognized for, like, we never say no to a challenge. It's like we're saying, give us a couple of days, we'll get back to you.
Yeah.
And instead of saying it's impossible, we're saying, yeah, well, it's difficult, but there are some ways how we can make it work. And I think that that's the culture of the company today. And I want to
Yes.
keep it. I want to preserve it.
Yeah. So tell me, what is a long-term vision for? I know you told me about $100 million valuation, long-term vision for the company, and where do you see it kind of going? And I know you said there are very few players, but just curious, where do you see it going?
Yeah, so in our space, a lot of companies like mine are being acquired. So companies like BP, Shell, or Schneider, or even Ford will go and just capture startups like mine and just make them part of the corporate environment.
Mm-hmm.
So that typically happens with all startups in my space, but I do
Yeah.
believe there is a very solid play for an independent company like ours.
Mm-hmm.
Hardware agnostic, you can be a partner to many companies, and you can actually grow with this electrification wave.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a J curve right now, so like it's the penetration is growing really fast, and we're just in the early days. There will be roughly 30 million electric vehicles on the road in the United States by 2030. We're just like a small fraction of it right now. So I think the ideal world for me is do my best to survive, be better than I was a day before, a week ago, always improve, always improve, but stay in the game. Stay
Yeah.
in the game as long as you can. So when I said 100 mil, it's a very midterm objective. I think I will be very satisfied to see when we close one of our rounds, like in a couple of years from now. But it's not my final goal. I think we can be really part of this full ecosystem and be
Mhm.
truly an independent, strong player and a very good partner for all those corporates out there.
Yeah, I have to ask you, since I now work for a massive petrochemicals company, why did you say BP and Shell would acquire y'all? I mean, is it like a strategic play for them, or why do you think y'all are like a strategic company, a strategic fit for them? I'm just curious.
Well, I mean, BP and Shell already made their bets in this space. So Greenlots was acquired, and some other startups. Electrification is part of their strategy. So
Mhm.
being an oil and gas company has its
Mhm.
advantages, obviously, and you know that very well. I think you would better speak about it than I can do.
Yes.
But the reality is, the green kind of energy transition strategy needs to be part of the bigger picture. So
Mhm.
those companies that I already mentioned, they already made their bets, and some others as well. And I believe there will be more like room for petrochemical companies out there to continue acquiring and developing the expertise in house. So
Mhm.
like you cannot continue selling like drilling and extracting oil and selling oil and gas uh,
Mhm.
you know in the future. So like the electrification is inevitable. So if you
Yes.
don't change your strategies, if you don't adjust, if you don't move, then at some point of time you'll probably need to make other decisions, like how you restructure your company as opposed to how you can transform it on the way to a new future. So I
Hmm.
think this is the type of decisions Shell and BP made, and other companies, but there will be more. There will be more, definitely.
Yeah, so whom I work for, they are owned by Aramco, which is one of the largest oil and gas. Actually, the largest company in the world, probably. So it's all upstream. I work downstream, so that's why I was very curious why you thought like you'd be strategic for
Yeah,
a BP and a Shell. So
yeah.
so um, how has your business evolved since you started? And like, I know it's still relatively young, new, but how has it kind of, evolved through the whole few years that you've done this?
Well, as a startup, you need to be really creative, and
Yeah.
you never stop. So you keep innovating, you keep pivoting all the time. And I already
Yes.
explained this shift when we had said no to hardware, no hardware. So let's stop doing hardware. Let's
Yeah.
focus on software only. But
Yeah.
software only is a huge world.
Yes.
My like kind of latest discovery. So I used to brand ourselves like we are a B2B SaaS company, and yeah,
Mm.
sure, like this is our deck that we sell licenses, this is how much it costs. And then suddenly in the past 6 months, our my fastest growing revenue stream is actually payment collection. Those charging stations, they're essentially a proxy to gas stations, and we started having way more traction in the public charging space with charge point operators, with hotels. And we also provide the processing services. So we actually collect payments, we do payouts, we do all the transactions, we support QR codes, credit card readers, mobile apps. And suddenly I realized, look, we are a B2B SaaS company, but we also became a fintech company. And
Mhm.
that was like one of the latest developments that actually surprised us when I looked at the numbers. Like, wow,
Yeah.
this real? It is real. And we looking at my forecasts, actually, in 3-4 years from now, I think the fintech component of our business will be dominant.
Yeah.
So then, like you do your software, you do your B2B SaaS as a foundation, but the truth is you will be part of this transactional market like Visa or MasterCard. And that's like one of the, big kind of discoveries. And obviously, I kind of thought about that before, but when you see this on a daily basis, monthly basis, you look at your reporting and plans, and suddenly you're like, okay, this is real. So one of those things, yeah.
Very cool. So that's interesting, like how it is basically it's a software, and then you're like, oh, I'm making this huge money in fintech component, right? So that's
Yeah.
amazing. So, tell me about your leadership style. And I truly believe a leadership style is very essential as you like grow, and people don't think about this so much, but I feel like I know, like I have a certain leadership style. It is a combination of servant, and sometimes I can be tough as well. So I'm curious, like what is your leadership style?
um Well, first of all, maybe one step back. So when you're building a startup, you don't have much time to hire young professionals. And I know it's maybe not really, it doesn't really sound good, but you don't have time to educate people, train them. You need to deliver from day one.
Yeah.
So what happened with us, and we did it on purpose, we only hire mature specialists. So when we talk about software developers, we don't hire juniors. We only hire like middle or senior developers. We
Nice.
only hire executives. We don't have like junior people doing any work for our company, which has, it's kind of two-sided coins, right? So it's more expensive,
Mhm.
but you don't really need to work with them, and you don't need much hand holding.
Yeah.
And that's actually a good reflection of my leadership style.
Yeah.
I work as a, I would say, senior partner.
Mhm.
So there is no dictatorship. So
Yes.
like it's more like advisory, kind
Yeah.
of soft and strong at the same time. but
Yeah.
I treat each team member of Epic Charging as a
Mhm.
partner, like
Yeah.
truly a partner. I would listen. If I disagree, I will do it in a very respectful manner. I
Yeah.
don't give direct orders. I would rather,
Yeah.
speak, understand the strengths and weaknesses of any decision,
Yeah.
and I give people room to
Yeah.
improve if they happen to fail. And
Yeah.
we have this forgiveness for fails, and which is really unusual for corporates, because if you fail once, you're dead. In our case, well, that happens. Let's fix it, and let's make sure we don't do that again. And that's the culture I try to cultivate inside of Epic Charging.
Um, yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think one should have resilience to failures. And it's very important because you have to let your people fail. Otherwise, you will not get creative ideas. I mean, creativity out of them. But I also feel at times you cannot I mean, you can give a person x number of chances, and after that it's kind of hard to give the seventh or the eighth chance, to change, kind of a thing. And I've been in situations like that, and I'm like, I can't give more than that, kind of a thing, right? But yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree with you in one thing, that you have to give them bigger projects and bigger piece of work where they are okay to fail, and it's okay. I mean, it's fine. That's totally okay. But then at the end of the day, what has truly worked for me is like hiring people who are basically independent and are able to function independently and with very little management from my side. And that's like, and I just tell them, like, this is the vision, this is how we do it, and they are doing it all themselves. That's my ideal situation, but doesn't happen all the time. Anyways, tell me a book or a mentor that significantly influenced your journey. And all of us have those books and those mentors that has changed or pivoted our journey. So
Yeah. Actually, a wonderful question. I had a privilege of working for a very talented manager while I was at Nissan.
yeah.
His name is Ogi Redzik, and at that time he was the Alliance Senior Vice President of Mobility and Connected Vehicles, a very big title,
Yeah.
but he had a really good mindset, creativity, and he was also encouraging innovation. So we built a really good relationship with Augie at Nissan. Then I
Mhm.
left the company, and we stayed in touch. And I came back and said, "Hey, Augie, I have a crazy idea." He said, "Tell me more." And now he has a different job. He moved from Nissan to Caterpillar, so he's now the chief
Wow.
digital officer of Caterpillar. A
That's
super
great.
busy job. He's a super executive, but he was able to find some time for me for that discussion. Said, "Look, okay, I have a crazy idea. Why don't I do this or this or like?" And he said, "You know what? Just do it." And it's like, okay, that's interesting. And you
Yes.
know what? I will give you money.
Yeah.
It's like, really.
Wow.
And
Good for
so
you.
it took me like a few months to actually just like kind of process all of that. And I started building MVPs and prototypes and stuff like that. I showed him. He said, "I love it. You know what? Keep going. And if
Yes.
you need more confidence, you know, this is my check."
Yeah.
Essentially, this is what he did.
Yeah.
So he was my like first. I think without Ogi, I wouldn't have started the company at all. So I
Wow.
think he really, he was that, you know, probably the last drop in my glass, saying, giving me the right level of confidence that I can do it.
Yeah.
But also he financed the company, and also he keeps advising me through all my journey from day
Yep.
one. So I think
Yeah.
this is super helpful.
Yes.
And it's just like when you feel there is someone behind your back,
Yeah.
you have a challenge, you have a question, you have a tricky situation, you pick up the phone, and he will always find time. So I'm just lucky to have that kind of person
Yes.
helping me and being my mentor. I can easily call him my mentor, my friend, my investor, my advisor, whatever it is. I think that's the name. This is really helpful for me.
Yeah.
Talking about books, I think the most impactful books for me at this stage of my life are books about Steve Jobs and
Yeah.
Elon Musk. Yeah,
Yeah.
by Walter Isaacson, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Both are I've
So
read both of them actually. Yeah.
yeah, those are wonderful books.
Yeah.
um, very nice chapters on how you run companies, take risks, how you manage teams, and this is like, and you learn from the best, and the books are very well written, so I would recommend. In general, I'm a big fan of like history and
Yeah.
politics and all that stuff. i,
Yeah.
I love classical literature, but
Yes.
again, at this point of my time, those are probably the two most valuable books. I quote them all the time. I re-listen or reread some abstracts from them
Yeah.
when I need inspiration,
Yeah.
or I'm thinking of how to best handle any particular situation. And I'm not saying they're Bibles. They're not. They're not. So people like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs made a lot of mistakes in their life. And in some
Yeah.
aspects of their life and career, they're very inspirational. In some of them, they're not.
Yeah.
But that's fine. So that's fine. Just try to identify the value which is important for you in those
Yeah.
books.
Actually, there's Steve is one of my favorite entrepreneurs as well. Like if you met me outside of, there are some things which I think I talk like him here and there. So so he's inspired me. I mean, he's inspired me quite a bit. And there's a back in when I graduated, I did my master's in engineering. I graduated in 2008, and he gave a very famous speech at Stanford, and I did graduate at Stanford. And I thought, and that speech like touched me so much, and I thought like I wish he came to my university and gave that speech. And every time I would like have questions or doubts in my head, I would go back and listen to that speech again and again. But there's one thing he told, which like motivates me, I mean, or inspires me. He talks about, how he hired the best people, and he basically asked them to tell him what he should do, right? Which I thought is the because that's like my philosophy as well, because I want to be surrounded by people who are more intelligent than me. If I am surrounded by people who are not more intelligent than me, I become very uncomfortable. So
It's an excellent point. We had a chat with Ian yesterday, and this is
yeah,
exactly what I told him. So
yeah,
I feel there are like in our team,
yeah,
we have a lot of people who are doing certain things way better than I can do those,
yeah,
and that was like, this is very inspirational. So, and I feel instead of thinking, oh, we're competing, or
yeah,
not at all. So you
not,
actually need to be surrounded with people who have
yeah,
skills and qualities better than yours
yeah,
in some aspects or many aspects, and
yeah,
this is how you can build a great company as opposed to an
yeah,
average company. So that's my personal philosophy as well,
yeah.
also my experience. Yeah.
Yeah. And even like when you talk, when you're talking about advice. So I was just telling a friend of mine yesterday that I take advice from 10 people before I make a decision. Whether I also work with the Japanese, so that's a different thing. I'm so used to doing that. The Japanese make decision like that, but I like to.
Nemawashi. So the process, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, so I want to take advice from 10 people, and then I will make my decision, because I want to validate it in every fashion, that I can. But when I'm making big decisions, that is. So that's like awesome, I have to say. So what is so what are the most critical skills? And this is our final and the last question, and I promise I said that I keep it at 40. We're at 49 minutes. So what is the most critical skill an entrepreneur needs to have, and what advice would you want to give someone who's starting their company, like your mentor, who's the chief digital officer of Caterpillar, which is a big deal, would say.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I can easily answer this question. I think the main quality, I cannot call it a skill, but it's actually resilience, right?
Yeah,
So you need to be able to tolerate
yeah,
all your ups and downs and uncertainty. You
yeah,
need to have skin, very thick skin,
yeah,
for all the pain which is coming your way. And
yeah,
one advice for someone looking to become an entrepreneur, don't do that unless you are ready to have pain and sacrifice. And it's sacrifice on all fronts:
Yes.
money, family,
Yeah.
time, friends,
Yeah.
uh, your energies, everything. And
Yes.
it's very uncertain. So I think what I realized, it's not my first startup. So I've done a couple of projects in the past in my life. Some of them were successful, some of them failed.
Yeah.
But what I developed over time is this really thick skin and
Yes.
ability to live in uncertain environments. So I think if you are not that type of personality,
Yes.
building a new company, a startup, will be
Yeah.
very, very difficult.
Yeah, I say this resilience all the time because I've seen like now, since I speak to so many entrepreneurs, I've seen like people not have resilience, and resilience is so important, and just in life in general as well. I feel it's kind of very very important uh, for you to sustain life, because if you don't have that, right, and if you cannot hear a 50 no's before you hear a first yes, right, and you bring your ego in the front, there's no ways you can survive, I feel. So totally concur with you, I would say. So Michael, it was great chatting with you and learning about your journey and learning a few things from you. Personally, I just enjoyed chatting and learning about your background, and as well as your how you have a very positive attitude, which I have to say is amazing. So it was great to know that. And I have to say we are towards the end of our podcast, and thank you for coming and sharing your story.
Thank you, Akshata. So the pleasure was mine. Thank you so
Yeah,
much. Have a great day.
you too.